good at a brew, baby? What is up, YouTube? It's boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander. We're back for week 2 of Lost Caverns of Ixalan content. We are here for Vampire Week, and this show is Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commanders in front of us on my quest to outbrew the magic world. Not just your favorite channel, but the magic world. Today, we are taking a look at my upgrade for the Blood Rites precon, headed up by Clavileño, first of the Blast, a vampire commander who cares about vampires and demons. Kind of an interesting deck. And let's go through what Clavileño does, and we'll talk about what I built the deck to do. The deck list, of course, as always, is going to be down in the description for you to use as you wish, whether it's something you want to take and make better, take to inform the decks that you have. I love hearing all the comments you guys give with finding out about cards from these videos. But Clavileño, first of the Blast, is a 3-mana 2/2 Vampire Cleric. It says whenever we attack, target attacking vampire that isn't a demon becomes a demon in addition to its other types. And it gains when this creature dies, draw a card and create a tapped 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. I think there's going to be a lot of relatively interesting ways to go with Clavileño. I think a lot of people are going to pick up on the demon side of his effect and throw in things like Liliana's Contract, which I think is fair. I think my approach to all 4 of these Lost Caverns of Ixalan is going to keep them as tribal decks. I wanted to go tribal vampires and take advantage of a lot of the life gain that vampires have. All of the tokens we're making in this white-black Ixalan Vampire Sphere all have lifelink. So I think we're going to have a lot of triggers and a lot of ability to make lifelink sources as well as we're playing cards that are going to assist us to gain life. And my hope is that we can position our life gain to help us further the board state and hopefully win the game. Now, tomorrow we're actually going to go over Carmen, the backup commander for the deck, because I actually, for my personal brew for the deck, I decided to go with her. So if you're interested in that, that video is going to be going up tomorrow. But all right, what are we going to do? Well, to start up any good Sacrifice Aristocrats deck, we need to get a group of creatures together to start it. And a couple of cards are going to help us do that, and of course, some of them being very new cards. Charismatic Conqueror is a 2-mana vampire soldier with vigilance. It says whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, we make a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. This is great because this is going to target both artifact and creature heavy decks and kind of have a pseudo blind obedience or style effect where they either tap it or we get the benefit. And believe me, we're going to use those 1/1s to our advantage. We're going to showcase the new enchantment here, March of the Canonized, X double white to make X 1/1 vampire tokens with lifelink. And then to start our upkeep, if our devotion to white and black is 7 or greater, we get to make a demon creature token with flying. So it's not just the tokens we get when it comes down if we have enough devotion. So if all the permanents on our battlefield between white and black have at least 7 pips on the cards, we're going to start making a token every turn, which is going to help us when we start pushing our deck towards that Aristocrats sacrifice theme. We've got 2 fun creatures that are commanders in their own right, Elenda the Dusk Rose, and then a new card like Elenda in Elenda's Hierophant. They both do very similar things. Elenda says when a creature dies, we put a counter on it, and then when Elenda dies, we make a bunch of 1/1s equal to her power, whereas Elenda's Hierophant says whenever we gain life, we put a counter on her, and then whenever she dies, we create a 1/1. We create 1/1s equal to her power. These are going to be good for us because we can build them up over multiple turns and sacrifice them to get a bunch of tokens and try to bring them back with something like Carmen or some of the other things that we have that can get vampires back from the graveyard. So these 2 are cool in a lot of ways because we can set them up and then use them for the tokens. And a great way to find them in our deck is going to be Forerunner of the Legion. In fact, all 4 of the tribes that we're talking about over these 4 weeks of the main precons from the deck, all 4 of them have a Forerunner from the original set. And when it comes in, you search your library for a vampire card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and put the card back. The rest, put it on top and put the rest back on bottom. This is the same for dinosaurs, merfolk, and pirates. And then here it says whenever another vampire enters battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 until end turn. So if we have a turn where we make a ton of vampires, we can soup something up. And so I like it because it's a 3-mana searcher, but then it also has has an extra benefit on top of it. And then the last card that we can use to make some tokens is a Modern Vein, Dusk Apostle. Whenever one or more non-token vampires you control attack, we get a 1/1. I do want to mention, because I feel like I'm going to be a broken record talking about this card, all of this set, because of how good it is, but Roaming Throne is a card that matters in a deck like this. When it comes in, we're choosing a vampire, it becomes a vampire, and it says if a triggered ability of another creature you control of that type triggers, it triggers an additional time. This is going to trigger Clavileño when we attack. This is going to trigger a lot of our vampire effects in the deck, and so it is important. It is a pricey card, but it's becoming very clear that this card's going to be important to probably a lot of tribal and kindred decks that people are going to be trying out there, and so I think it's important to talk about it and why it's important for the deck. Okay. So we make a bunch of our tokens, we're getting everything set up, we're building up a board state. Clavileño is making things so that when they die, we get tokens back, which is great, because then we're profiting still, even off of sacrificing our creatures. But how are we going to sacrifice and make benefit? We have a couple different outlets in the deck. We have things like Bartolomeo del Presidio. Whenever we sacrifice a creature or an artifact, we put a counter on it. So it allows us to sacrifice things for free, which is a great thing because it can help us sacrifice creatures at instant speed if we need to take care of certain things. Indulgent Aristocrat's kind of a cool card. To pay 2 and sack a creature to put a pulse and counter on every vampire we control. This is going to allow us to potentially build tall. Most of our traditional Aristocrat payoffs are going to be making our opponents lose life and us gain life, or vice versa. They lose life when we gain one, or we would gain one, and some of our effects would then make our opponents lose one. But what I like about Indulgent Aristocrat is if we have enough mana, we just pump our board, and Clavileño's making these 4/3 demons with flying. Hopefully we can get over our opponents that way. Master of the Dark Rites sacrifices a creature to add triple black. We can only spend it to cast a vampire, cleric, or demon spells. Well, that's great because every creature in our deck is a vampire, so it's going to be very easy to spend that mana accordingly. And then a card that is not a sack outlet, but it cares about things being sacrificed, is the new Veto Fanatic of Akhlazotz. Says whenever we sacrifice another permanent, we gain 2 life. It's the first time that it's happened this turn. It's the second time each opponent loses 2 life, and it's the third time we make a Daemon creature token with flying, vampire demon creature with flying. Veto, it makes all of the sacrificing we do and all the other effects we trigger better, because once we get to that third one, we get a token, and we'll end up, hopefully we can end up profiting off the whole thing when that happens. Now, what Clavileño I try to get the deck to do, and what I think we're going to talk a little bit more tomorrow when we talk about Carmen, is trying to use this life gain, this ability for these vampires to gain life, or our sacrifice effects to gain life, to our benefit. Carmen, the secondary commander to the deck, or one of the secondary commanders to the deck, is important for this. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, we put a counter on her and we gain a life. And then whenever she attacks, we can return one target permanent with mana value less than or equal to Carmen's power from our graveyard back to the battlefield. What I like about this is Carmen isn't just sitting there gaining us life and getting counters. Now she's bringing creatures back, which allows us to hopefully recycle these cards like Elenda and Elenda's Hierophant. So we're constantly using them for tokens and getting them back. The hope there is that then she can, enable that part of the strategy for us. We have a card like Sanctum Seeker. It says whenever a vampire we control attacks, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. That's on the attack trigger, so this is hurting them before we even, profit off of that attack, before we even get anywhere as far as damage goes. Well, we have a couple important sacrifice type effects. The first is Bash Remembrance. Whenever a creature we control dies, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. So now, when we sacrifice a permanent, we're hurting our opponents and we're gaining life. And we're trying to also pay off gaining life to hurt our opponents. And there's a couple cool, interesting cards that do that. The first is the old Veto, the Veto from the last time. We were at Ixalan, and I believe it came out in 21, just after Veto Throne of the Dusk Rose. So whenever we gain life, target opponent loses that much life. What I like about Veto, and very similarly what I like about Marauding Blight Priest, who does a very similar thing, except it says each opponent loses 1 life. So Blight Priest will hit everyone just for 1 whenever we gain life, whereas Veto will hit someone for the exact amount of life we gained. Is we have so many ways that I think we're going to end up gaining life that these are going to become very useful. one of the most valued reprints in the deck was Exquisite Blood, a card that says whenever an opponent loses life, we gain that much life. And this can actually cause a triggered loop with both Veto and Marauding Blight Priest to basically drain all our opponents out on the spot. This is a big combo that exists in the deck. I didn't add Sanguine Bond because I didn't want it to be the obvious combo. I wanted us to be able to do this on creatures. But actually, when we talk about Carmine tomorrow, we're going to see a deck where I pulled Exquisite Blood out completely and just focused on trying to maximize the amount of times I can gain life. And using Sanguine Bond, which says whenever you gain life, your opponents lose that, or target opponent loses that much life, to basically try to gain life while also hurting our opponents. And I think that we'll see some interesting things with that. And then one of the Planeswalkers I had that didn't come in the deck was Sorin Vengeful Bloodlord, that says during our turn, creatures and Planeswalkers we control have lifelink. And I like this one because if our creatures deal damage to our opponents outside of combat, they have lifelink. But just anything we do in combat has lifelink. It's going to gain us life back, trigger those life triggers again, and then we're really taking advantage of all of that. Okay, I think that explains enough of what we're trying to do, and you guys can dig into that deck list to see what else is there and to see some of the intricacies I tried to build in. But let's talk about what cards to consider. As I've said before on this show, no deck is ever done, and we only brew version 1.0 deck lists on paper before testing. But what are some of the cards that I liked, but I just didn't fit in the list that I'd want to test? The first is Preacher of the Schism, a 3-mana 2/4 rare from the set. As Death Touch, whenever it attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, create a 1/1 token with lifelink. And whenever it attacks while you have the most life or are tied for the most life, draw a card and you lose a life. This is kind of an interesting ability because you can get some tokens or draw some cards, which I think is really important. Vran Executioner Thane. Whenever one or more creatures you control die, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. This happens once per turn. I like this because if we can get this card on the battlefield, we can focus on trying to sacrifice something on everyone's turn or getting one of our creatures to die on everyone's turn and taking advantage of this little bit of, loss of health every turn. Of course, you have your classic token doublers like Anointed Procession. I had thought about it. I tried to get it in, but I wanted to make sure we got a good amount of synergy. I didn't want to just go all into tokens. I wanted to still go wide with vampires. We still have vampires that really help pump up our board, and I wanted to kind of make sure that was still a focus, even in a deck like this. But of course, Anointed Procession is a classic one for that. And then a card I looked at more than once, I just wasn't sure, was Feast of the Victorious Dead. It says at the beginning of your end step, if one or more creatures you died this turn, you gain that much life and distribute that many +1/+1 counters among creatures you control. We're going to see tomorrow in the Carmine deck that this one plays a little bit more role in that deck. But in this deck, I wasn't sure if I could get it to really rock the way I wanted to. But let's rock in. Let's do 1 or 2 little play tests to see how we're going to approach it. Well, we have 3 landers in hand. We have Excluded Courtyard, which can give us either color, but only for vampires, which means these 2 white cards in our hand are going to be kind of dead at the moment, but I trust that maybe eventually we'll draw into a white source. At minimum, we can get our commander down on turn 3, and I think that's important. So we're going to draw turn 1, put this black down, and get the Aristocrat down. This is going to help us get set up for sacrificing some creatures and gaining some benefit. Turn 2, we don't see a white source, but we do see a Cordial Vampire, which is a really great card in its own right. Whenever it or another creature dies, we put a counter on every vampire we control. This is great because then we can start building up our board and making good value. Now, if this draw is not a white source that we can play immediately, I think we just immediately dump Clavileño, and it's not. So we put Secluded Courtyard, calling vampires, we cast Clavileño, and maybe we try to get in and attack if we can. If we can, then we can give an ability to one of our creatures and do it that way. If we can't get an attack, then we just hit the hold pattern and try to wait out for another mana. We seed in the Shine Down Snarl, but unfortunately this bad boy comes in tap. So that's kind of unfortunate because we're missing the white source for something like Radiant Destiny to be really good. Unfortunately this turn we just have to hold, or we could swing something like Cordial Vampire in. If it dies, we get that 4/3 and a +1/+1 counter on everything else, and then we can go on from there. And then here on turn 5, we see another land. I think I would rock this, get this roaming thrown down to start doubling up our abilities. And now all we need is just continue feeding the fire, and I think we can start building up our board state. All right, let's go into another hand. No white source in the opener and 2 black sources. I think we got to mully this one away. We have a three-lander, and we have all three of our colors. So I like this one a lot better. We see a card like Veto, which is a really good card. Drana, 3-mana Drana is a great creature as well. And of course, Viserys here, one of our free sack outlets. So I like this hand. I think it's slated pretty well. Turn one, we have a 2 lands that are going to come in. Well, Shinedown Snarl will come in untapped because of the Sunlit Marsh. The Sunlit Marsh is going to eventually come in tapped. So I think what I would do is hit the Snarl untapped here by showing the Sunlit Marsh, and we'll play that Viserys here to at least get a creature on board. We draw an untapped Plains, which is cool. So the question becomes, do we sacrifice it and get the 4/3 with Promise of Aclazotz? That doesn't really make much sense, and I don't really see a good 2-mana play, so I think I just put this Marsh in tapped here and get us ready for Clavileño next turn. Turn 3, we dump this guy in, and I think we get our commander down now. If we had one more creature, we could have Convoked for the Markov Baron, but I think I'm okay right here, just getting Clavileño down and getting ready for the next turn. There's a world where we slam the Viserys into somebody and get a point of damage if someone's open, or try to get that 4/3, but I think I'm okay with that. Turn 4, we get the Secluded Courtyard down, calling Vampires. I think there's a argument for Drana here, getting an attacker. There's an argument for Veto. There's an argument for either one of them, and then convoking out Markov Baron, which is another option, and what I think I probably would do. If we Drana, we keep up Village Rites, which also isn't a bad idea, so maybe that's what we do. We Drana. By using these 3 lands, keeping up the Snarl, we would go ahead and convoke out... well, let's think about this. If Viserys, I've already attacked with it and already has Clavileño's ability, then I think I tap out for Markov Baron by convoking them, and then use the Village Rites on Viserys to draw us a couple cards and get that 4/3. If I haven't done that yet, I think you do it this turn, attack with Viserys, and if it dies in that combat and we get the 4/3, we just use the 4/3 to convoke Markov Baron. Otherwise, we just convoke out Markov Baron by tapping these 2 and that 3rd mana if needed, and just set up for the next turn. And the next turn, this Basilica is going to come in tap, but we still have 4 mana to use. And I think Veto's probably our choice. Pick our Plains back up, put this bad boy in tapped, and now we can start attacking and sacrificing from Viserys if we want to. Next turn, we can wait till the Bartholomew gets down and start sacrificing with that. We have that Promise to use as well. Again, I think we have a decent board state here. We have a payoff with something like Veto, Clavileño, as long as we're attacking, and we don't have to attack with the... Oh, it is the attacking creature that gets it. So we can also attack and get a token for maybe putting a creature in a bad position. But as you can see, this is where the deck starts to go, hey, how do we maneuver in that mid-game and kind of build our board up? But let me know what you guys think of Clavileño down in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys think, and I will catch you guys in the next one.